Okay, so I'm walking people through the steps of design and construction for this house. And in today's video, we are covering schematic design. If you missed the last video where we covered the pre-design process and some of the early stages of design, go and check that out. But this is the next series of steps in that process. If you're new here, my name is Jacob Wimsatt with c.w. Architects in Nashville, and my company specializes in creating modern residential architecture all over the Tennessee region. With that said, let's jump into the schematics. So the first thing you have to know about the schematic design process is that it is messy. And the reason why it's messy is because we have a lot of data now from the pre-design, and we have to smash all that stuff together in order to create a series of iterations and to do some explorations that start to identify a design solution. Now, the reason why you've got so much data now is because we did that zoning review, we did that building code review, we've got some solar angles and a bunch of other information related to program and what you're wanting, in addition to all the site data that is coming from the survey. All of that stuff now has to be married together. And essentially what is happening in the schematic design is that we are iterating and we are exploring design opportunities. When it comes to the yard house, we've created 21 iterations in the schematic design process. Now, it depends. Every single project is different, and they vary on how many iterations that you have to go through. This one was pretty challenging because of some of the site constraints and some of the other things that were going on. So it took about 21 iterations to actually come up with a solution that worked. One of the things that's important to note as a homeowner is that you are collaborating with the architect to ultimately create a home that is truly customized to you. At the end of the schematic design process, you want to have something that matches your lifestyle, that matches your wants, that matches your needs, and it matches the context or the site that the home is going to be placed on. It's important to understand that architecture is ultimately a balance between two opposing factors: that which is pragmatic and that which is poetic. It's a balance between that which is artistic and that which is scientific. It's always this back and forth between aesthetics and functionality. It's important that this balance takes place because without the science, it's art, and without the art, it's engineering. So in the last video, we covered the pre-design process, and ultimately that was about gathering the information and understanding the project parameters. Those project parameters were anything from the zoning review all the way through to a program, which is the characteristics that you need in the home. Now that we have all that information, it's time to combine it all together and come up with a design solution. The first step in that process is to come up with a concept. We covered in the last video some of the concept diagrams that we explored. Through those series of diagrams, we came up with a solution that created a better experience for the homeowner, connecting the yard and separating the house from the street. The reason why the concept is so important is because ultimately the concept is going to guide all the design decisions in the future. When it comes to selecting material, when it comes to creating form, creating a layout, all of those things are going to bend to the concept. And if the concept's strong enough, it's going to make the project much more successful than it would otherwise. Schematic design represents about 25 or 30% of the entire design process. The point of the schematic design is at the end of it, we want to have an idealized prototype version of the architecture. All the things that go into making the home buildable will be done in the later phases, but we don't want to focus on that right now. Right now, we want to focus on creating a successful design solution that matches all of your needs, all of your wants, and works with your site. So let's take a moment to just quickly discuss some of the software we use. In the office, we use SketchUp for the schematic design phase because it is an intuitive piece of software that allows us to quickly iterate in 3 dimensions. Later in the schematic design phase and moving forward into the design development phase, we'll actually switch over to ArchiCAD. You may have heard of Revit, which is ArchiCAD's big brother, but essentially it is a BIM software that requires you to input a lot of information about the building products. This is not needed in the schematic design process because we are exploring and changing the design so much to to find as many design opportunities as we can. Okay, so I just want to share with you guys some of the iterations that we went through in the schematics. This first iteration that I'm sharing is actually iteration number 4. And the point of me sharing this is really just to show you how simple and flexible the design is at this stage. The only thing that you really see is the diagram from the pre-design that's indicated with the blue and the yellow. And then you also start to see some of the vertical elements that we're starting to place. The reason why we're starting to place the vertical elements is we want to create that privacy between the street, but we also want to identify things like entry, and this larger vertical plane has a stronger sense of hierarchy, which is why it's a taller plane. We're also starting to indicate certain materials like glass. In this particular diagram, the entry is actually where this large glass element is. And then moving around to the other side, you can start to see that we're dividing up the space into 2 major spaces. That is the public space indicated in blue, and then the private space indicated in yellow. Now, when we talk about public space and private space, and we're talking about public space and private space inside the house, what we're really talking about is where guests go and where guests do not go. So the yellow, the private space, is actually the primary bedroom wing of the house, and then the public space is indicated in blue, and it is the living, dining, kitchen, the half bath, and certain spaces like that where the guests are actually going to be. Moving forward into iteration number 18, this of course is not something that you've seen yet. You haven't seen any of the renderings for this particular design because the client actually wanted to change it and make the ceilings taller. One of the big critiques that she had for us was she wanted to have the house to have a bigger street presence, and she wanted to explore doing ceiling heights as high as 18 and 20 feet. So from this iteration, number 18 to number 19, is when you start to see the design that you're used to seeing in the renderings. Some of the elements from 18 are still here, but of course we've lifted that ceiling height up and we're trying to build that street presence or create that bigger volume that makes the house look more grand. The reason why I wanted to share this is because from 18 to 19 is of course just one iteration, but it's so flexible during the schematic design process that we're able to manipulate this geometry and move spaces around very easily because we haven't gotten into any of the engineering and haven't started to figure out some of the pragmatic elements in the architecture. And then of course moving from 19 into version 21, which is the last iteration in the schematic design, you can of course see that this looks much more like the rendering and looks more like the constructed product. Now again, in the schematic design process, we want to get to the prototype. We want to get to the idealized version of the house. Now there are some slight changes to the aesthetics and to the layout that we went through during the design development process, which is of course the next phase. But those changes were made because of the engineering and because of some of the other pragmatic variables that we had to solve. But for the most part, this is the schematic design. This is the result of the schematic design process. So I hope that gives you some idea of what the schematic design looks like. Now, I know that was pretty messy because, again, it is about iteration. It's very messy in the beginning. We're trying to slam all these different things together when it comes to like massing, when it comes to the program and the zoning regulations. All these things are coming together all at the same point, all at the same time. Now in the next video, I'm going to cover what design development looks like. Now this is late stage design. It's where we start to involve the structural engineers, we start to involve the mechanical engineers, we start to build a bigger team that answers all the more specific problems to make the home constructible. So stay tuned for that, and if you have any questions, please leave a comment. I'm always up for helping folks build their dreams, design their dreams. So please do that. Please like the video and please subscribe. Thanks and have a great day.